welcome back, and I see the face is happy, so I think yes, the program so far you enjoy. So this is the last program today, but at least, so this is the panel discussion, and it's about AI and science communications. So I'm Tomomi, the OIST, from OIST and the JSF organizer, and I introduced the panel. This panel explores the evolving role of AI in science communication, from shaping press release policies to transforming communication practices with generative AI. The panelists will also discuss the critical challenges posed by AI-driven misinformation and deepfakes. So I introduce today's moderator, Thilina, Heenatigala, ELSI's communication director from JSF. So mic is yours, Thilina. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tomomi. Okay, and hi everyone, welcome. So I will introduce our panelists who are actually, I realize they're not strangers to JSF. Everybody has some level of involvement. So starting with Brian, who's been a long-term supporter, for JSF. Not only JSF, but SciComm in general in Japan, even before JSF started. So from EurekAlert, and then we have Heather from OIST, who's been a supporter since a few years, and also JSF, as you know, hosted at OIST. And then we have Daisuke from Japan Fact Checker Center. And he was also a speaker last year for JSF Social. You can see his talk online for JSF YouTube. We would love that. So, welcome everybody.
Yes, it's
so
going up. Yes.
Our topic is actually AI and science communication. As you know, AI is pretty much everywhere. And me coming from academia, one of the interesting things that I came across living in Japan is actually 2 years ago, our university sent out an email to the whole faculty saying you have to change the way you do assignments with the students immediately. And we had like 1 month, and to make sure that no student can complete an assignment using AI. And this is such a lot of mixed feelings about this from our faculty for the university, because one, it was not enough time to think of, and it was too new in academia how to use AI. And also the idea of restricting something without actually understanding was had a big backlash. And on the other hand, students found actually, at least students I teach, found a really interesting way of listening, where for many of our students, English is a second language. So a tool like AI was very useful when they're writing reports, when they're writing assignments, and trying to form what they really want to say. And but we still are quite behind restricting on how to use it. And there's good and bad on things, and this is why we are here. And this is a topic we'll move forward as well through JSF in the coming years. And I want to bring first Brian in we'll go one by one, and then we have a group session. And we will give you time to ask questions, so prepare your questions now. And I'm going to bring Brian in now, as coming from press releases and having press releases. And this is actually a lot of information in sort of automating some of this information. And I know EurekAlert has certain policies on if you use AI for press releases. And how have you, especially let's start from EurekAlert, how have you sort of set up processes to identify these, and what is the purpose of actually identifying these?
So the short answer is we don't have a process to identify it because really you can't. There are already, I think, research studies done that you can't use any kind of existing tools to differentiate consistently whether something is AI produced or AI assisted. I think that one of the main believes that we have at EurekAlert is that our value proposition is around trust and integrity and reputation. And as far as we know, the vast majority of the public information officer or PIOs that we work with care a lot about the stuff that they put out on our platform, because the number one audience on our platform is registered journalists. So these are journalists who are actively looking at these news releases. They're vetting them. They are potentially, putting them on their own platforms. And having been one of these press officers, I know how hard it is to get something, first of all, from a paper form to a news release form. How many rounds of edits that you have to go through, negotiations that you have to go through, for every single word that you put in there. So I think that from the conversations that we've had with our customers, our content producers, is that they are not really entrusting AI with the kind of product that they're producing for our platform. There's been some informal surveys with journalists as well, both on my team and on our colleagues, the Science Press Package team that have spoken to their journalist members, and I would say that there are technical, logistical, and philosophical resistance to incorporating AI in their own reporting. And then finally, the Science Press Package team has, over the past year, done their own internal experiment, and they will be presenting these results at the NASW meeting next month. So they have, as many of you know, they have their own team of science writers who write summaries for science papers, and they put out on EurekAlert. They use them to help facilitate coverage of science papers. And so they have their own science writers have been comparing their own writing with a ChatGPT version of summaries. And what they have found generally is that these tools are really good at distilling one main message from a paper. They're very good at doing that. And they're very good at changing the tone and the references to meet different types of audiences. But where it has a lot of difficulty is when the paper has a novel methodology. So this is a brand new methodology. It hasn't been documented before in a previous paper, so obviously it hasn't been put in the training set. That it has multiple findings. It has trouble identifying which finding is more important. So from this experiment, and as I mentioned, it's about 250 summaries that they have examined over the past year across all disciplines, and they find that these tools may be helpful in certain aspects of their work, but it's currently not going to replace real human beings. And that's my belief. I mean, the analogy that I came up with is that I think human-produced content is going to be kind of like the certified organic food that we're seeing now. When you have so much junk out there, you're going to start looking for those unique, authentic products. And so I think that there is bright futures for all of you in science communication if you can incorporate those principles. But I am not too worried about losing my job. And I think the best quote that I've heard is that AI is not going to take your job, but somebody who knows how to use AI is going to take your job. So my principle is what I call responsible experimentation. So it's really important that we know what's out there. It's really important we know what's possible, and then we can, like my boss likes to say, use the evil tools for good, right? We want to use as many tools as possible to help us do the good work that we do.
I really like the human produced content is the certified open.
We need to use it with attribution.
So you touched base on a lot of ethical issues. And I know in this room, when I look around, there's a lot of people who are working on press releases. And which is actually, especially for Japan, is one of the key things, form of communications at universities. As a press release, like almost like a distributor, which is we get to the world through you. Is there anything that you can sort of tell, okay, if you want to use AI or if you don't want to use AI, what are the sort of like policies that universities can put, and in what reason? Because right now I see, just read, a lot of the things that we have been given is like, don't do this, but not explaining why don't do this, and don't do this, but also, again, why you should do it.
Yeah, I think transparency is the most important aspect of this, right? Like if you did use AI in some way, I think it's important that you disclose it because it helps journalists understand, first of all, journalists and then members of the public, once the release goes public, how you've incorporated AI in your process. And just as we at AAAS have encouraged folks to talk about the process of doing science, you know, the mechanisms that make science what it is, rather than just talking about the end result and just expect people to trust it, right? I think science communication is the same way, right? If you're producing news release and you use AI in some way to help make it better, I think it's worth disclosing. And I'll say that, you know, we have a competitor, it shall not be named, that have already offered a free AI tool for producing news releases. And frankly, when I saw that, when they started publicizing that, they said, you know, you can use this free tool to make as many press releases as you want, and you can pay us to distribute it. I stopped thinking of them as a competitor because our value proposition is completely different. You know, if a journalist comes to EurekAlert, they're looking for high quality content from credible institutions who have invested in the hard work of translating science to you know, a publicly accessible format. And so again, you know, it's kind of like if you so there's a lot of crap videos out there, but people still watch a great movie. They still invest 2 hours to go to a great movie that has been, you know, has invested human ingenuity and creativity and hard work into it. And I think that it's human nature to weed out the crap. And you know, I hope that as we move forward, EurekAlert will actually be able to be distinguished further and further from the crap. And you know, this is human-produced content. It may not be perfect, but there is authenticity in it.
And I want to move some of this actually into to Heather. And so Brian is almost like where production of the university goes out to the world, and where you're sitting at top of the university with at a position where you can actually take decisions on these are the tools we can use to communicate our research, our complex ideas. And even one of the things I noticed in our university is that even to create something very simple as a poster for a symposium, now we use like generative AI. Our team does it. And people are happy with it because you don't have to also now pay humongous amount of money, but also this is something you can do in-house. What are your thoughts on sort of using generative AI to communicate complex research topics into different audiences as a university?
Yeah, I would say first, let's be careful when we say produce a news release, because I think we all appreciate there are a dozen or so steps that go into that. You know, and I'm not taking away from the transparency point, of course, or any of the ethical points, but if we use AI to generate ideas or to make a project plan, do I disclose that? If someone asked me to do some math, I wouldn't disclose that I used a calculator. A silly analogy, but so in my mind, the conversation is so broad, so we're trying to look at it in a really, really bigger fashion. And by the way, we are just at the beginning of this conversation. We are using it in individual tasks, but we aren't yet using it, we don't yet have policy at an institutional level, nor at a department level. To me, your question is really about how can we use it to share complex ideas. I mean, I don't know if that's our biggest hurdle in science communication, but that's a pretty big mountain to climb. And so I think AI is a beautiful, beautiful tool, an important tool. Does that mean it's producing the whole, from start to finish? No, of course not. So I think in that sense, I'd like us to think about it more as a mindset. Ethan Mollick says always invite AI to the table. It doesn't mean they do every single task, but let's think about how we might be able to use it. There was a study, maybe it was a Microsoft study, that says that AI increases productivity. Okay, that's pretty easy to figure out. But guess what? It also increases enjoyment of our work, too. So, and isn't that so interesting? Because that's such a human element of our work, too. So, it can help with such a broad task. So I started thinking, just preparing for today, okay, keeping to science communication, keeping to, let's say news releases, okay, story ideas, interview questions. And by the way, there's a caveat with all of this, right? We don't just take it and send any of it out the door. So yeah, interview questions, transcription after your interview, an initial draft, maybe for a review, maybe for iteration back and forth, because that can be a really great tool to have a writing partner in that sense, and really making improvements. And then one we sometimes forget is really packaging and repurposing. And that can be really, really, really helpful, because goodness knows there aren't enough hours in the day for all of our work. So if there are places where we can improve our work. And let's not forget, some people think, I'll just do that task, now it'll only take 30 seconds. Okay, that's not realistic. But I was thinking about, I haven't done a study on this myself, but I was thinking of some of the tasks that I've done, and how much time did I save? No, it doesn't get anything down to 30 seconds or 2 minutes. Nothing gets down to that. That's not right. But maybe something that used to take a day, that's a lot of my time. Could I get it down to a few hours? That's big. That's huge. And that's just, of course, a gross generalization. I recognize that. But the point is that you don't take something complex and get it down to nothing. That doesn't make sense. Maybe next year we'll be having that conversation. But for now, I'd like to encourage everyone, to think as broadly as possible. So whether it's, what's that word I'm thinking of? 3 syllables, starts with a consonant, means this. It's great for that. Google can't do that, by the way, I've tried. So it's great at thinking about that. You had mentioned tone. Oh my gosh, it's really great if you've written something, but you think, okay, I need to do another draft because I've realized the audience has shifted for whatever reason. I was going to do it here, now I'm going to pitch it here. It's really great for that. And at this stage, again, maybe a year from now I'll be talking about something different, but I've really noticed garbage in, garbage out, right? When I give it great content, great instruction, great content, I get something better out. But I'm not using it from start to finish on every single step. It doesn't make sense. It can be iterative through those steps. So think about, really challenge yourself, especially if you think, I wish I had someone to bounce this idea off of. That sometimes AI can be that person, which is such a funny thing to say. I've even asked it, here's the problem, what sort of questions can you ask me so that I can give you the information that is in there so that you can synthesize it. So in that sense, it's a brainstorming partner. So, is there a news release at the end of that? For many of us, many days, yes. But it's a little different than, I'm not dumping in the article and saying, give me a news release. Although, if you can, then tell me what prompts you're using. But how can we use it to, I love this idea, increasing our productivity, of course, and let's increase our enjoyment at work, too.
Okay. That should be
also on a T-shirt.
Yes, I'll make bumper stickers.
Yeah. So your message is quite to all of us is to challenge ourselves to find ways to use it in a way that's a bit more meaningful and productive. And in this process of actually creating things and using it to help our work, how do we sort of set up a way that we make sure that quality and the authenticity is still kept in a, as Brian mentioned, like human products? How do you make sure that that happens?
We've talked a little bit about automation, and that makes me nervous because to me, automation kind of sounds like start to finish, and something comes out the other end, like a TV dinner or frozen dinner or something. And as I described how I was using it, it's not an automation. It's different tasks at the right time for the right purpose. And there aren't just risks too. There are just barriers in us using it on our teams, in our organization. So things like fear, skill, reliability. So lots of barriers, lots of risks. Not to answer a question with a question, but there's risk in not using it, right? Because someone who knows AI will take our job. So there's risk in not using it. So that's what I think this panel, these discussions, the discussions that we can have, at work, are going to be so important. What are the capabilities? What are the vulnerabilities? So that we're having those conversations together. It doesn't do all the work. We all know that, right? It may take that time down that I suggested. So what I like to think of is it's not a set it and forget it strategy. We know there will be hallucination problems. We know there could be copyright problems. Oh my goodness, IP. But more than that, and this is the human oversight part. And we have to be so careful because I know we're working our tails off. I know we're tired. Every little piece that comes back, even if it's just like a project plan or a timeline, which doesn't, we don't have to worry about big implications, to make sure that we're going through it so carefully. Because it's easy. It's tough to be a great proofreader. We all appreciate how hard it is to do fact-checking and proofreading, all those different skills. We have to wear that hat when we're reading everything. So review and fact-check everything. Everything. And it's tough, right, when we're writing about science communication where we're not experts in that area. So we have to do our best. We still have to have our processes in place where we check with the subject matter experts. And back to the human point, it's not replicating compassion. It's not all the time, it's not representing nuance. It's not representing, it can't always find those connections that are the beautiful part, the authentic part. So maybe, generative AI, maybe it's more like a partnership. It's not like just downloading all your work.
Thank you. So you mentioned something really important about fact-checking and authenticity. That's where I want to bring Daisuke in. So most of us are seated in a publicly funded academic world. And while academic world is quite slow in getting our research out, now AI is producing much more misinformation in a very alarming, and it was already misinformation even before AI was quite big. Now it's bigger. So I always feel like in academics we are always running behind, chasing behind something. And you are sitting at a place where Japan fact-checking center. How does, I can't even imagine where to begin such a task. How does this big AI-driven misinformation and deepfakes, and how do you start tackling that to begin? How do we even start thinking about this?
Yeah, thank you. This is quite interesting. Talks. But before answering your question, just I want to mention that I'm a journalist / fact checker, and I use AI every day when structuring my piece of writing. Just to check I'm better than AI. Sometimes, sometimes I add the perspective the AI give me. It's just like 5%. and all the words and phrases fact-checked by me. So it's a really important point to keep authenticity. Okay, and yeah, I want to answer the question about disinformation by AI. So first, I want to emphasize the threat of disinformation created by generative AI is only beginning. The proportion of disinformation today from generative AI is still tiny. The 2024 is the election year worldwide. There have been concerns that generative AI could cause widespread confusion. But however, there hasn't been much generative AI-driven disinformation in countries where elections have already been held, like in Taiwan or in India. Yeah, we found some, but a lot of disinformation were created by human, not AI. Now, even in the United States, where elections are underway, NGO News Literacy Project, they are tracking this information. They reported that out of over 700 disinformation, only 7% were generated by AI. And as the editor-in-chief of Japan Fact-Check Center, now we're debunking this information daily, and now we're in the general action too here in Japan, and it's only 2 weeks, really short time the election race, but we've already fact-checked 15 disinformation here in Japan, but not single one created by AI. It's all by human. However, this doesn't mean that the AI-generated misinformation is not a threat. It's a brutal threat to our society. AI-generated images, videos, and audio have already reached a level that is becoming indistinguishable by human eye or ear. So not only can AI create content from scratch, but the technology to subtly alter just part of the content, it's really challenging for us to check this is created by AI or altered by AI. One of the most alarming aspects of AI is its ability to generate an unlimited volume of content. As the sheer quantity of content explodes, it won't just overwhelm our ability to verify the suspicious information. It may also make it difficult for us to even access the reliable information we need.
Thank you. So, this perspective is quite interesting because it's beyond the academia that the world that we actually don't really so much think of, because even in academia we are in our own bubble, right? And but you are daily also dealing with public and what goes into the society, wherein as the academic process of going from a university to a society like public is pretty long process of reviewing and sort of checking and so on. So even though there's so many mistakes, like paper being redirected like all the time, there's still a process to check. But in your perspective, looking at academic side, what can academia, like starting from PR office, like PR staff, press officers, scientists and directors, is there anything that we could actually do to tackle the misinformation, disinformation, especially when it comes to AI?
So the point is not how to create content or communication, but the point is how to reach out to people, how to deliver our content to people. Now, do you know the word of encyclification of internet? Now it's a lot of city content on internet, and some of them are generated by AI. And next year, it will be overwhelming. We cannot find your great scientific, reliable content, because there are a lot of city content on platform. So what we need is first communicate with platforms, and we need to ask them to promote our reliable content than their unreliable content.
Thank you. And I think trusting platforms also, we circle back to EurekAlert in that way, where you have these certain platforms you can trust. This information coming from this venue is something we can trust. And I also want to say, like, a quick raise of hands. Are you using AI for, like, at work to write a press release or to do a project, or in personal life? Who is using here? Right. So there's a lot of people using it. And I'm also curious, is there anyone who's not using it on purpose? Yeah. Okay, interesting. So, and this is just for the whole panel, so I want to sort of feel free to jump in anytime and even stop me. So we see a lot of good things, and I kind of don't like the idea of pro-AI and against AI, this whole very binary, because it should be much more like a rainbow of opportunities, not a binary approach. And because I'm sure some of you may remember when the internet boom came, there were a lot of pushback saying this is not good, this is don't use it. And now we cannot, I mean, every single person with a smartphone is connected. And so eventually at some point, AI, I assume that we are going to come to that point. But then certain sectors are going to lead it, like from policy, communication practices, and management, and so on. Is there a common sort of a way we can work together, or should we even work together? Because internet was not a process that common frameworks were set up. Everybody had their own thing, and we now come to 4G as a common and 5G as a common, but there was no very common practices back then. But can we identify some common things that every sector should sort of look into? Any?
I can start it off.
Yeah.
I don't have the complete answer. Yes, there's that big umbrella approach of things that we all need to be thinking about, and those are mainly the ethical items that the ethical responsibility questions, I guess, that you're talking about. So the Global Alliance for Responsible Communication has discussions around this that I didn't bring, but folks who, I guess almost everybody's hand should look at those sorts of things. And they're really fundamental things that I think probably we've touched on a lot of the themes, but I think it's worth looking and thinking about. So there's that big picture, but then I think as institutions we need to think about guidelines in that respect as well. How can we do this responsibly? So what I'm thinking of is three things. Really, it's really practical because the rubber's got to hit the road. So the first thing is, of course, we need leadership buy-in to be able to really think about how to do this properly, responsibly, effectively, all that. And then, and I take this model from not-for-profit health organization I saw in the States, is then creating a group, a cross-team group to work together to get on it. And I just say get on it because it's so easy, to put off, everything's changing, we'll never be able to come on top of it. But acknowledging that, getting started, and having this group of super users, or you can call them whatever you want, but super users that can get together and help tease some of these ideas out. And of course, we need people from IT and security on there. We need people from Marcom on there. We need people who just have a passion for it, no matter where they sit. So having people on there to help inspire others, to help to get processes in place for your organization, also to help normalize the use in a responsible fashion. And so I think, that is so unique to every organization. That's why I'm talking about doing it at the organizational level. Because you think of organizations that house proprietary information. Well, maybe that's every organization, but confidential organization. What are going to be our rules? So for instance, some organizations say that when you register, if you're using an external service, you don't use your work address, which creates interesting questions around now you're putting your personal self in there, which is a whole other interesting thing to think about. And then when you do put information, not using your organization's name, but then are other details. I mean, these are all the things that this group needs to chew on. And even if your group doesn't have perfect information, they're giving it good thought. And then, of course, that will grow and that will create momentum. And let's say your super group was open to everybody, and the super users could grow and grow and grow, and it could actually create a bit of a community, while also helping to support those guidelines for really safe, effective use. So I think there's this big question, the organization question, but then also, divisionally, how do you want to use it in your division for doing really specific tasks? And then individually, we saw those hands goes up, people were choosing not to use it. How do you want to fit in to that? So that's that sort of tiered approach that I'm thinking about.
Do you have something, Brian, would you like to add?
It's tough. I grew up in Taiwan, so I have great respect for authority and government. And Taiwan has done actually pretty well when it comes to AI and use of the internet and digital tools for democracy. I encourage you to look up. The Economist has a show called Babbage, and they a couple months ago interviewed the first, I think, digital minister of Taiwan. She happens to be a transgender person. She was the first transgendered cabinet member in the world, and and they've used the internet and cell phones to help democracy instead of the other way around. But I also believe in free markets, and I think that at the end of the day, it's whoever creates the best tools that's the most trustworthy, that gets used the most, that gets the top, that gets used. We're all using Google nowadays, but and so Google somehow became the best and the most convenient, and so people just, we use the word Google as a verb, right? But when I do searches now, I default to AI, Perplexity, because it makes my job more enjoyable. Like, I could do the job with Google, but it's going to give me a bunch of links that I have to now go and synthesize and understand. But now I get it in a lovely tone, But I still like to be able to verify, which is why I choose Perplexity over ChatGPT, because I can click on the link, and sometimes, what is said in the bullet wasn't actually in the link, And so I think that at the end of the day, what I, in the ideal world, is what I like to see is folks having the critical thinking skills and the ability to judge for themselves what works best. I think folks will choose different level of seriousness in terms of the tools for different level of work, right? Like, if I'm just looking for movie recommendations, maybe I'll use ChatGPT, but if I'm doing, homework research, I'll use Perplexity, because if ChatGPT gave me a terrible recommendation for a movie, I've lost 2 hours. But if I use Perplexity for a press release and there was hallucination in it, I lose my job, right? So I think that people will choose with their wallet and whatever it is. I think that there's room for government, but government typically is going to be too slow, too piecemeal. And there are places around the world where people don't trust the government. So what if the government come up with something? What's the point of that?
Yeah, that trust is actually quite interesting. So recently, so I teach science communication for master and PhD students. One of the assignments I gave them is to write an abstract for a real conference and add references using ChatGPT. Every single reference was just wrong, and it was completely ChatGPT created that as references that doesn't exist. And But we actually push, I'm not going to mention which conference is this. One of the students actually submit that abstract to the conference, and they accepted it as a talk. And we later on we revealed saying this is actually a test, and but here's a real abstract, and but you didn't check any of them. So there's a lot of easily you can see how trust can be broken and misinterpreted in so many different ways. And that's why sort of like you still need a lot of human tracking and human testing and human, accuracy. And I also wanted to sort of see who has a question. You can raise your hand, and we'll bring them up.
Wait, the guy who doesn't use AI?
I still have
He's
questions.
still curious.
Actually, this kind of links up with what Thilina was mentioning on submitting a abstract that's completely fake. One of the other concerns with AI is just like similar to initiatification, but like slop, the AI slop era that we are kind of going into, where everything that everything that might be submitted to a journal or a site like EurekAlert could, or any kind of like speculative fiction journal, not journal, or like magazine, is that this large influx of people just generating, hey, make me a 1,000 word science fiction article, and then just submitting it, different stories 3 or 4 times a day. And so, and that feels like is something that should be addressed also for publishers like EurekAlert or at institutions. So I was wondering if there's like a kind of a comment or something that can be just a single comment from anybody here about like, yes, like AI is being made, but like, okay, how about this kind of low tier quality stuff that's like permeating all around us on the web?
I'm going to be quoted on this, and I'm going to lose my job. But I'm not actually I'm not worried. Just thinking about EurekAlert as a platform, who we are, what we do. The one reason I believe in it is that it's built on a sort of a system of trust, and it's trust with individuals as well as organizations, right? So before you can submit a news release, you have to apply as a PIO. We check your institution, it is legit. If you represent a journal, we check that the journal is legit, and then we check that you are indeed working for that organization. So the organization is paying you to enhance their reputation, not trash it, right? And then when you send us a press release, so we do the checking on the person level and the organizational level, and then we check the news release when it comes in. We don't fact check your news releases. We're not set up for that. It's not what we're meant to do. But we look for the pieces of information that we feel best practice should be in the news release so that it can be checked. It can easily be checked. And so I think that as representations of your individual organizations and the fact that you are submitting it to a platform that has its own credibility and integrity to uphold, and you're submitting it for the primary purpose of having a journalist check it, that you're not going to do something stupid, right? So I'm not so worried about that aspect of it. But I do want to sort of throw your question over to Daisuke, because something that he said really resonated with me, which is that there is a whole lot of good information on AI. And one of the sayings that some smart person said that really resonated with me is that the way to fight misinformation and disinformation is not to fact check every single one of them and to try to remove them, but to flood the system, so to speak, with good and accurate information so that misinformation has less of a chance to survive, has less of a chance to reach people, because there are millions and billions of pieces of information that never gets seen, right? And so can AI actually do that, right, by producing and as AI gets better, hallucination rates go down, there's other sort of, system safeguard in it. Could it actually be a tool for good by flooding the system with so much good information that bad information just doesn't have a way of surviving.
Yeah, thank you. It's really great point. We call it a data void. We need to fill the data void with reliable information. But the problem is now we are finding the era of the democratization of AI. Everybody can use AI. So how many people can produce the ethical and trustful information? How many people really understand science? So the people who doesn't understand science will start to use AI. So they are maybe submitting the abstract made by AI and it's totally false. But still, the student, he wasn't ashamed about that. That kind of people will start to use AI. So that's a problem. No, it's not a problem about AI. It's a problem about the people using AI. One aspect of AI evolving. The reason why this information created by AI is not much spread today, that because now AI is smart enough to generate the real-ish content, but the AI is not smart enough to create content people want to watch or people want to share. AI doesn't understand people's tastes. The people understand people's tastes. But I don't know, maybe next year or in 2 years, the AI will understand people's taste. The real threat will come at the time.
Can we, so you, for the Japan fact checker, you also have a badge, kind of a, this website can be trusted, kind of a, like trust website. Do you have that? Is that something we could sort of look forward to, like just to add more context? In Europe, if you take some of the products at the supermarket, you see the bio sort of a license. Can the universities, organizations could actually get something similar? So you trust this source of like, or like EurekAlert, for example.
Business opportunity right there.
Yeah, in United States, there is a news guard. They are now ranking for each news site. This is 95 point, or this is 50 point, or this is 30 point. So they are ranking the news site, and it is great. But in Japan, yeah, there is no such organization. And if you start this kind of organization in Japan, it's more about politics. The many news organization will start to attack you. Hey, why do you rank me as a 50? I should be 80 or something like that.
Let's go to Matt in the back.
Okay. So the discussion so far, though, has been treating the problem of AI as basically a supply problem, but there's also a demand problem as well, too. And the most recent research on political misinformation, political disinformation, is that it's about motivated reasoning, and basically people look for information that supports their current political views. So for example, someone who is anti-vax will specifically look for anti-vax information as a way to kind of strengthen their identity as a member of the anti-vax group. So in terms of AI, it's not really a question so much, it's just a comment that so far we've been treating it, in this discussion I see it as a supply problem, but people want their views confirmed, and that's before AI, but now we have AI, you can get your views confirmed perhaps at lower cost and more frequently than in the past. So it's just kind of more a comment than a
Yeah, I mean, so what you're saying is that people who have specific views, that say they believe in conspiracy, they would use AI to find ways to confirm that.
Validate.
Right. I don't know. I don't know if AI is responding in that way. I don't know enough to say otherwise, but I tend to think that the major products are largely accurate. And the study that just came out in Science last month said that this was an MIT study that essentially used AI to have a conversation with somebody who has a deeply held conspiracy belief. And through conversations with AI, which provided sort of customized evidence based on the conversation, and it's a sustained conversation. So basically, it's a very patient person talking to you, addressing what you're saying, and giving you real evidence. And the study shows that it changed their views, and that the change, the effect lasted more than 2 months, and it also kind of fortified them against other disbelief. So I mean that it's one study, right? But it's giving me hope, and what it really strikes me. How many of you have friends and family members who are just like who believe in crazy stuff, right? Okay, so my in-laws are lovely people, but they're Trump supporters and they believe in all kinds of conspiracies. And instead of talking to them about it, my husband and I, when we visit, we just all agree not to talk about politics, right? And so we know that there's a limit to how patient you would be with someone who believes in things that you don't believe in, even if you love them.
That's beautiful.
And so in this case, I think AI has the potential actually to serve in that role, to have sustained conversations, to really listen. I mean, human beings don't listen, but AI actually does. So I'm kind of optimistic in that sense.
Okay, let's go to Akram. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Akram. I'm a science communicator, a dentist and a science communicator at a company where I hold interviews with researchers from around the world. And it's just kind of asking you as the panelists on who do you see should be giving kind of a consensus on the use of AI in the field of science communication. So I interviewed Professor Paul Trevindicke, who's the most cited researcher on AI research in dentistry. And in dentistry, there's a body called the FBI, not the FBI, the FDI, that kind of sets rules for how treatments should be made. And AI was part of the conversation, because there are now tools that use AI to diagnose X-rays. And I'm sure like everyone have heard of this. But in the field of science communication, like who does this? At least in your opinion, because this is something that needs to be, at least we need some steps that we would ask people to follow. Because now we are just kind of saying, okay, don't do this, do that. But what's the what do you call it, like the other way? What's the alternative?
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay. I think that's what I was referring to about that bigger picture before we get to the organizational, the division in ourselves, is that, let's call it the association, that professional higher level. And I think we do need to push on our professional associations here, and this is one of them, right? I mean, this is one of those associations, and there are other ones. And I think those associations are all made up of us, right? But it's dedicating the time, the effort, the conversation, especially when we don't have those answers. So I'd referred to the Global Alliance for Responsible Communication. They have put things on paper, some principles, so please look at that. But it's not just them, there are other organizations. So I just mentioned them as an example, but that, not because they're the example, but because they're an organization that has put this down. There's another organization, the International Association of Business Communicators, that I belong to, and I went to their world conference, and this was a huge topic, and they refer to the Global Alliance. And as a group of professionals who are dedicated to a craft that they want to take pride in and responsibility for. They're taking it very, very seriously. And just a little shameless plug, I do have flyers for the IABC that I meant to leave at the registration, so I'll use that. But any sort of professional organization, I know in Canada there's a science communication body that does a little bit of lobbying and advocacy. So I think the answer in some ways is us, but in an organized, raising our profession sort of manner. So it's you and me and us here, but we do have to create that time and space. And I think, nod to the JSF for adding to that conversation today. But of course, we're just scraping the surface.
Yeah. Just a small comment before I put a question to the panelists. AI actually requires human content, human-created content to actually create something. And in fact, there was a study that showed that if AI produced a lot of content which was fed back into AIs, eventually the loop-back content would be just gibberish after several generations. So it is important to continue having human-created content out there. More specifically, what is important, I think, is to be able to identify AI-created content. And this is also important for the AI itself, to be able to filter out contents that it uses from the internet in order to train itself. And there are now more and more AIs which are watermarking their content creation, whether it's a video, an image, text, so digitally watermarking the content in order to be able to filter it out. Having said this, looking at the bigger picture, AI being a scientific creation, scientific tool that's been put out there, as scientific communicators, don't you feel that it is also our job to actually promote it, to communicate it, to educate people out there about AI? And in order to do this, don't you feel the best way is to embrace it?
In short, any comment on very short?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why they won the Nobel Prize twice, right?
Yeah. And that's why also we are discussing it here. We'll take one last question from, and then do a very, I wish we had more time, clearly, but.
Thank you. It's a really quick question regarding the use of AI. As a graduate student in engineering, and I'm currently undergoing writing a paper. So what is your thought about using AI for brainstorming, writing a paper, but then also not revealing it's kind of hard to draw a line of revealing your result to AI, because that could feed the wrong data to the whole database, but also utilize AI to help generating ideas or your writing paper.
Good luck at school. Engineering takes me back. It takes me back, only there was no AI. You have to make sure, of course, you're in line with your student handbook and your organization's rules, of course, assuming you are. I think brainstorming is wonderful, just as you would sit across from someone and brainstorm. But I would say, before you take any of those ideas forward, you've got to be checking it, because as you said, you could get too far down the line and almost be reinforcing with yourself and start to get confused what ideas came from where. So I think brainstorming is brilliant. And I think, even things like mapping out the different tasks in your paper or your timeline or different things to do, I think it can really help students a lot. Again, we kind of go right to the writing part, but even just I think student life could be, we could have some tools, whether it's talking to someone, because AI is available at 1 a.m. when things are always worse after midnight, right? So I think, in my mind, brainstorming is an awesome, awesome tool, but just make sure you check it along the way, which is such important learning, because you're only going to have to do this more and more in your career.
Great. So we are unfortunately out of time, but I would like to have one short comment from each of you. So AI, this is the first time we brought AI into Japan's ICOM forum, and definitely something we need to work on, and definitely, hopefully, we'll bring it to next conference as well. But looking, I mean, how fast it's growing, I want to start from Daisuke. How fast AI is growing, how do you sort of imagine that AI will be useful for science communication in the next 1 or 2 years ahead?
Do you use Midjourney or any image generative AI? Yeah, it's great. But if you look back, just 1 year ago, it's totally different. So in 1 year, it's like from baby to mature painter. So it's super fast. So I cannot imagine in a year or in 2 years what will happen for AI. It will be start to create really scientifically perfect, flawless content. I don't know. So we need to prepare. That's my answer.
Mm-hmm. Heather?
I think we'll be looking at like multimodal AI, where it can really process loads of different types of data at the same time. And I think that could be really, really useful in science communication and making our challenges even bigger. But I think, yeah, just being able to process, I guess, a bit more of different type of stuff at the same time.
Brian?
I don't think we're going to talk about AI in a year. No, I'm kidding. I think that in a year we are going to interact with AI just like we interact with the phone. It's in our pocket. We just pick it up. We don't even think about it. I think the IT folks call it, an enterprise solution, which means that. So we looked at EurekAlert looked at AI because I know it's going to be part of our job, right? But instead of us investing money in a tool and then asking you all to pay for it, I think what's going to happen is it's going to be embedded in your browser. So you submit a news release, you have too much jargon in it, but the person who's reading it will set their browser to, I'm an 8th grader, and it's gonna, you can hit a button and it'll redo it on the client side however you want to read it, or it could become a manga, whatever you want, however you want to receive it. So I think it was Heather or Daisuke who said, it's Heather who said it's not production, it's delivery. I think that's where it's going to be extremely, extremely intriguing. And I will add one last statistics for you. So last year or earlier this year, we found out that EurekAlert ranked 126 in the training data set for Google. For Google's AI. So if you use Google's AI to write a science news release and it's crap, it's because of all the stuff that's in EurekAlert. If it's really great, it's because of the stuff you put into EurekAlert. So I think it is really important that we start to distinguish, AI-produced content and human-produced content. And I think industry has an incentive to watermark and identify AI content because they do not want to re-ingest it. They don't want to, be the loop. And so I think that the industry standardization for watermarking and identification will come fairly quickly. And so at the end of the day, it's about the ingenuity of those of you here producing greater content to make that AI even better. And hopefully that becomes a virtuous cycle and not a vicious one.
Great. Thank you, Brian. And I want to wrap up here, and then we have an exciting dinner coming up. So even though in a very short time we mentioned packed quite a lot of things, and clearly it's a topic that we want to bring forward, but also I like that all of you actually mention in a different way that we also it's more about a mindset, that you think in a way either positive or negative, but it's one of the tools that in your life already, and you might even not know, but you are using it in certain ways. And we need to figure out how to use it in a better way to make our life easier. With that, I want to thank all the panelists for your time. Thank you so much. Thank you.